In this video, I want to talk about the double standard trap, why your ASD partner criticizes but won't be criticized. Okay, so have you ever thought, well, my partner can point out every mistake I make, every tone of voice, every forgotten chore, every social mistake, but the moment I bring up something they did, they completely shut down. Maybe they become angry, defensive, maybe they insist you're the problem. Maybe they melt down, maybe they shut down, maybe they disappear emotionally for days, and eventually you find yourself asking, why are there two completely different sets of rules in this relationship? I got such a double standard going on here. Now today, we're going to talk about one of the most painful experiences in a neurodiverse marriage, the double standard trap. Why can an autistic partner sometimes criticize constantly while being unable to tolerate criticism themselves? Is this hypocrisy, manipulation, emotional abuse? Or is something deeper happening inside the nervous system? Because understanding this pattern may be the difference between endless resentment and finally creating boundaries that actually work. And wouldn't that be great? Let's talk about the experience of the neurotypical partner. Many neurotypical partners describe the experience like this. Everything I do gets evaluated. The way I talk, the way I parent, the way I load the dishwasher, my spending, my driving, my emotions, my friendships, my facial expressions. But if I say, when you spoke to me that way, it hurt me, suddenly the entire conversation changes. The autistic partner may say, well, you're attacking me, or you're making me the villain, or I can't do anything right. Doesn't matter how hard I try, it's never good enough, or you're too sensitive, or you're criticizing me again. And then the neurotypical partner feels trapped because they think, well, you can judge me all day long, but I can't say one thing about you. And over time, it creates enormous resentment, and why wouldn't it? It feels unfair. It feels like emotional double standards, and sometimes it genuinely becomes emotionally unhealthy. But before we discuss the unhealthy parts, we need to understand why this happens. So let's look at the hidden difference, analysis versus evaluation. Most autistic people don't experience criticism the same way they give it. When they criticize, they often experience themselves as identifying problems, correcting errors, improving systems, increasing efficiency, preventing future problems. In their mind, they're offering data. They may say, you interrupted me 6 times. You were 10 minutes late. You used the wrong tone. That isn't logically consistent. To them, these observations can feel objective. But when criticism comes towards them, something very different happens inside of them. The nervous system hears, you're failing, you're defective, you're disappointing, you're wrong, you're unsafe, you're unacceptable. What was intended as feedback becomes experienced as danger. The criticism isn't entering the analytical system, it's entering the threat system. Now let's talk about the physiology of social correction. Most autistic adults have spent their entire lives being corrected. Sit still, make eye contact, stop talking about that, don't say that, you're rude, you're too blunt, too emotional, not emotional enough, you're weird, you're difficult. Thousands and thousands of social corrections accumulate over decades. Eventually, the autistic nervous system begins to anticipate criticism before it arrives. This means that when a neurotypical spouse says, I felt hurt when you interrupted me, the autistic nervous system hears, you're failing again, you're defective again, you're a disappointment again. And once the threat response activates, several things happen. Shutdown, defensiveness, anger, counterattacking, stonewalling, emotional flooding, meltdown, intellectualizing. Now, none of these reactions excuse harmful behavior, but they may help explain why the reaction can appear so disproportionate. The criticism is not landing in today's conversation. It's landing on decades of accumulated social failure. Now let's talk about why defensiveness becomes projection. This is where relationships become particularly painful. Sometimes the autistic partner can't tolerate their own feelings of inadequacy, so the brain unconsciously shifts those feelings outward. Instead of feeling, oh, I made a mistake, the nervous system feels safer saying, you made the mistake. Instead of, I hurt you, it becomes, you're too sensitive. Instead of, oh, I became defensive, it becomes, you're attacking me. That's called projection. And it often happens automatically, quickly, unconsciously. The person is not necessarily sitting there intentionally manipulating their spouse. Their nervous system is attempting to escape overwhelming shame. But here's the critical point. Understanding projection doesn't mean accepting projection. Compassion and accountability must exist together. Now, let's talk about the emotional abuse trap. This is where many neurotypical partners become stuck. They hear, well, it's autism. So they stop bringing up their own needs. They stop expressing hurt, stop asking for accountability. They begin walking on eggshells. Eventually, the rules become the autistic partner can criticize, the neurotypical partner can't. The autistic partner can express distress, the neurotypical partner must contain theirs. The autistic partner's nervous system matters, the neurotypical partner's nervous system disappears. Well, that's not sustainable. And over time, it can become emotionally damaging. The goal is not to eliminate the autistic partner's vulnerability. Rather, the goal is to make room for both nervous systems, because one person's dysregulation can't require another person's permanent silence. Now let's talk about the clinical reframe. I want you to consider this. The problem is not criticism. The problem is asymmetrical safety. One partner feels safe criticizing, the other partner doesn't feel safe giving feedback. That's the actual issue. The solution isn't stop being defensive. That's not going to work. The solution is creating enough nervous system safety for feedback to become tolerable. This means slowing conversations down, reducing emotional intensity, using shorter statements, avoiding criticism during overwhelm, separating behavior from identity, and allowing processing time, because what feels like stubbornness is usually neurological overload. Now let's talk about healthy boundaries that actually work. A neurodiverse friendly boundary might sound like this. I'm willing to hear your concerns, but I also need some space for mine. Or, if you can point out something I did wrong, I also need to be able to discuss what hurt me. Or, we can pause if you're overwhelmed, but we can't permanently avoid the conversation. Or, I'm discussing a behavior, not your character. Your discomfort matters and my feelings matter too. And for the autistic partner, you can say, I feel defensive right now. My nervous system is overwhelmed. Can I have 20 minutes to process this? I want to come back to this conversation later. I'm hearing criticism, even though you're probably just giving me some good feedback. These conversations become possible when both partners recognize that the enemy is not each other. The enemy is the threat response. Now, if you're the neurotypical partner, you may have spent years feeling like the rules were unfair. And sometimes they probably were. Your pain is real. Your resentment makes sense. If you're the autistic partner, you may discover that what feels like an attack is often feedback filtered through a nervous system that learned long ago that mistakes were dangerous. Neither partner is the enemy, but neither partner can disappear. A healthy neurodiverse relationship requires two truths. Your nervous system deserves protection, and your partner deserves a voice. When criticism becomes safer, accountability becomes possible. When accountability becomes possible, defensiveness decreases. And when both people can speak and both people can listen, the double standard finally begins to disappear. Now, if this video resonated with you, leave a comment below. Which side of this cycle do you recognize most? Criticism, defensiveness, or silence? And if you're trying to build a healthier neurodiverse relationship, subscribe for more practical tools for both autistic and neurotypical partners. I'll see you in the next video. Would you like to schedule a paid private coaching session? This will be in the form of a face-to-face Zoom call. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this Calendly link. If you click on that link, it'll open up my calendar. You can pick the available days and times that works for your schedule. You'll get a follow-up email immediately after purchasing a session that will have the Zoom link that coincides with the day and time that you picked. I will get an email too that you scheduled a session, and I will be available on that exact day and time, and we will talk. I look forward to working with you. Hey guys, this is Mark. Some of you may not know that I have a lot of books on Amazon. So if you like my videos, you'll like my books. I have several for ASD spouses, for NT spouses, and for the neurodiverse couple. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this link. Feel free to click on that link and see what's available. I'm sure you'll find something that applies to you. So if you're struggling in your neurodiverse marriage, help is available, one click away.